Hello, scholars. This is Miss Brooks back again today to go over with y'all your 2.05 assignment. Write a thematic analysis on this is what it means to say Phoenix, Arizona. Your teacher-graded assignment is going to be to read this short story and then write about the theme of it. You're going to evaluate what the theme is and how the author develops that theme through text evidence. If you were here with us last semester, you already completed this assignment. We did it over the short story, The Star Beast. So if you were here last semester, this is very similar. You're just going to be writing about this is what it means to say Phoenix, Arizona instead. If you need a recap, a refresher, if you're new to TIVA this semester, stay and watch this video because I'm going to go over once again how to do a thematic analysis. And I apologize if it looks like I'm not looking at you. My camera is on one screen and I have this document up on my big screen. But I am going to go through it with you all. So first things first, we need to remember what is theme. When we talk about themes and movies and songs and poetry and books, what are we asking? Well, theme, quite simply, is, if you look in the dictionary, the definition is an idea that recurs or pervades a work of art or literature. Basically, it's an idea that comes up over and over and over again. You can also think about theme being a lesson about life and humanity. It is, let me add this, theme is the author's opinion about humanity. It's important to remember that it is ultimately the author's opinion because you might not agree with what the theme is. That's okay. It doesn't change the fact that that is the theme. You are free to disagree, just as the author is free to have their opinion. Another important thing to remember about theme is that theme is universal. That means theme applies to me, it applies to you, it applies to people that live in Japan, Africa, Canada, it applies to people that lived 100 years ago, it applies to people that will live 300 years into the future. Universal means it can connect to everybody. And so because of that, it's important to remember that theme is not going to use character names or the names of specific places. Specific places. See, all your teachers have to sound out words too. So theme does not use character names or specific places. If they do, that is not theme because then it is not universal. Theme has to be universal. Let's highlight that. Theme has to be universal. When I'm having trouble finding theme, I ask myself these 4 guiding questions. I ask myself, what does the character want? That is their motivation. That is the reason the story is happening in the first place. Your character wants something. What is it? How are they going to achieve it? But it can't be just as easy, oh, your character wants something and they get it. Then, no. Stories don't happen that easily. Stories need conflict. And the conflict is what is stopping the character from getting what they want. So your character wants something. Something is stopping them from getting what they want. So the character is going to try to overcome that conflict. Throughout the story, that is called the character arc. They or society is going to change. So you need to ask yourself, how does the character or society change? And lastly, what lesson is learned? The journey the character has gone on to get what they want. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't get it. Regardless, a lesson is going to be learned. That can help you find out what theme is. So those are the 4 questions you should ask yourself anytime you're going through any kind of fiction story, poem, a drama. These questions can help you find theme. So remember, you are writing on, this is what it means to say Phoenix, Arizona. I am going to model a thematic analysis with Harrison Bergeron. You should have read the story already. It was earlier in the semester course. So you should be familiar with the story already, and you should have already completed a quiz on it. So we're going to go over this one, and I'm not going to read all of it to you just because you should have already read it, but let's go through the main points. So we know we have George and Hazel, so we have George and Hazel. The year is 2081, so it is in the future. Let's look at this first line actually. The year was 2081 and everyone was finally equal. What does that mean for everyone to be equal? They weren't only equal before God and the law, they were equal every which way. Nobody was smarter than anybody else. Nobody was better looking than anybody else. Nobody was stronger or quicker than anybody else. I just want you to think about that for a little bit. What would that be like? Because we all have our differences. You sitting on your side of the computer watching, you and me have differences. Maybe you're better at basketball than I am. Maybe you're a better cook than I am. We can say, yeah, we have the same rights. The government gives us the same rights. God gives us the same rights, whatever. But we're not, equal in every way because we each have our differences that gives us that individuality. So right off the bat here in Harrison Bergeron, okay, we're told, everybody is equal. That is probably going to play into our conflict. So if you remember, I'm sorry, I don't know why that highlighted gray. Let's change that. So if you remember the story, how do they keep everybody equal? Well, they keep everybody equal by using what the author calls them the handicaps. So George, while his intelligence was way above normal, had a little mental handicap radio in his ear. He was required by law to wear it at all times. So we can see, so this is how the government, this is one of the ways that the government keeps everybody equal. People that are different, they're given these handicaps. That is what is supposed to help equal all of them. And so if you remember, we have George and Hazel, and they're talking. They're watching the ballerinas. He tried to think a little bit about the ballerinas. They weren't really very good. No better than anybody else would have been anyway. So look at that. So look at that. Ballerinas. And they're just mediocre because nobody is allowed to be a good ballerina anymore. They were burdened with sash weights and bags of birdshot, and their faces were masked, so that no one could see a free and graceful gesture or a pretty face. So people aren't allowed to be more good looking than other people anymore. And George was toying with the vague notion that maybe dancers shouldn't be handicapped, but he didn't get very far with it before another noise in his ear radio scattered his thoughts. So George is George is going against the directive. He is trying to think about individuality, and his handicap activates. And so all this first half is establishing the setting. And so we have to remember that Hazel and George, they're not our protagonists, though. Remember, our protagonist is Harrison. And so we see here right now where Harrison is mentioned. Right, said George. He began to think glimmeringly about his abnormal son who was now in jail, about Harrison. But a 21-gun salute in his head stopped that. And so let's go back in, because we'll remember Harrison is going to appear on the TV. Let's see, what page is that on? So right here. So here Harrison comes, they talk about Harrison on the radio. Harrison Bergeron, age 14, she said in a grackle squawk, has just escaped from jail where he was held on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. He is a genius and an athlete, is under-handicapped, and should be regarded as extremely dangerous. So we're told about Harrison. Oh, hey, Harrison is a genius and an athlete. But we were told earlier, remember, that no one is allowed to be better than anyone else at anything. The ballerinas, they're not allowed to be better dancers than any other random person on the street. So now we're being told, oh wait, Harrison is a genius and an athlete. He's under handicapped. So right now we're being told, oh hey, Harrison is not equal with y'all. And that makes him dangerous. A police photograph of Harrison Bergeron flashed on the screen upside down, then sideways, upside down again, then right side up. The picture showed the full length of Harrison against a background calibrated in feet and inches. He was exactly 7 feet tall. The rest of Harrison's appearance was Halloween and hardware. Nobody had ever borne heavier handicaps. Nobody had ever borne heavier handicaps. I also like the alliteration in that sentence. Heavier handicaps. So Harrison has more handicaps than anyone ever has in history. Why would that be the case? Well, so Harrison clearly is, he's got these differences, these talents that make him way above other people. and the government is trying to squash that. So Harrison needs these other handicaps to stay equal with the rest of society. And so here it describes all the different handicaps he has. We want to get into when Harrison appears, though, and when Harrison talks for himself. So, clanking, clownish, and huge, Harrison stood in the center of the studio. The knob of the uprooted studio door was still in his hands. Ballerinas, technicians, musicians, and announcers cowered on their knees before him, expecting him to die. I am the Emperor, cried Harrison. Do you hear? I am the Emperor. Everybody must do what I say at once. Oh, hey, check that out. I think we've answered one of our questions. And it took us a little bit. We're almost done with the story. And that's something to also to know about theme. Theme might not appear until near the end of the story. That is okay. All stories are different. That's why you have to read all of them. But I'm going to go up to our questions real quick. We know that what does Harrison want? So Harrison wants to be the Emperor. Let's go back down. Let's see what else Harrison says. Maybe he'll give us some more information. Even as I stand, he bellowed, crippled, hobbled, sickened, I am a greater ruler than any man who has ever lived. Now watch me become what I can become. Harrison tore the straps of his handicap harness like wet tissue paper. Tore straps guaranteed to support 5,000 pounds. Harrison's scrap iron handicaps crashed to the floor. Harrison thrust his thumbs under the bar of the padlock that secured his head harness. The bar snapped like celery. Harrison smashed his headphones and spectacles against the wall. He flung away his rubber ball nose, revealed a man that would have awed Thor, the god of thunder. I shall now select my empress, he said, looking down at the cowering people. Let the first woman who dares rise to her feet claim her mate and her throne. A moment passed, then a ballerina rose, swaying like a willow. Harrison plucked the mental handicap from her ear, snapped off her physical handicaps with marvelous delicacy. Last of all, he removed her mask. She was blindingly beautiful. So, why is he taking off all of her handicaps? Think about it. Well, we have to think about why have the handicaps existed so far? They've existed to try and make people equal. But we know now that, hey, people can't ever be truly equal, not in the sense that this short story is trying to tell us. There's always going to be somebody that is more good looking. There is always going to be somebody that is smarter. There is always going to be somebody that is the better dancer. So when Harrison is removing these handicaps, he is doing it so people can have their individuality. So Harrison says, let's dance, play the music, and the musicians start playing their music. Harrison placed his big hands on the girl's tiny waist, letting her sense the weightlessness that would soon be hers, and then in one explosion of grace and joy, into the air they sprang. And hey, look, now they're flying! Harrison is so far advanced mentally, he is such a genius that he has learned how to basically use telekinesis to fly. Not only were the laws of the land abandoned, but the laws of gravity and the laws of motion as well. They reeled, whirled, and swiveled, flounced, capered, gambled, and spun. They leaped like deer on the moon. The studio ceiling was 30 feet high, but each leap brought the dancers nearer to it. It became their obvious intention to kiss the ceiling. They kissed it. And then, neutraling gravity with love and pure will, they remained suspended in air, inches below the ceiling, and they kissed each other for a long, long time. It was then that Diana Moon Glampers, the handicapped general, came into the studio with a double-barreled 10-gauge shotgun. She fired twice, and the Emperor and the Empress were dead before they hit the floor. So, Harrison and his new girlfriend are dead now. The handicapper general, the person that is in charge of keeping everybody equal, making them, lose their individuality, has killed the two people that were showing off their individuality. Diana Moon Glampers loaded the gun again. She aimed it at the musicians and told them they had 10 seconds to get their handicaps back on. It was then that the Bergerons' television tube burned out. So, we're going back to George and Hazel. Remember, Harrison was their son, and they were watching this on TV. So, we see So Hazel, Harrison's mom, she was crying. Yep, she said. What about? Harrison's dad said. I forgot, she said. Something real sad on television. What was it? It's all kind of mixed up in my mind. Forget sad things, said George. I always do, said Hazel. So, they've forgotten about it. And we can infer that, hey, this is the handicapper general. Somehow the government made everybody that saw this forget. Why would they want them to forget what they had just seen on TV? That's going to go into our theme. So Harrison wants to be the emperor, but let's also go a bit deeper. Harrison rips off all of his handicaps. He rips off the other ballerinas' handicaps. He wants people to take off their handicaps. So we can kind of see he wants two things. So he wants to be the emperor, but he also wants to live in a world without handicaps. And so, what is stopping the character from getting what he wants? What's stopping Harrison from living in this world? Well, the handicapper general, the government. What is stopping them from getting what they want? So, the government keeps enforcing the handicaps. How does the character or society change? Well, we know society doesn't change. Harrison changes by dying. So, Harrison ends up not getting what he wants. Sometimes that happens. And, sometimes there is no change. That can tie into theme too. Not changing sometimes is as important as changing. For the purpose of this text, though, society does not change. So Harrison dies and society stays the same. What lesson is learned? Let's think about it. So Harrison wanted to free people from their handicaps. He died and his mission failed. What lesson is learned? Well, I'm thinking about it. Sorry, y'all. See, and I'm trying to put my thoughts into words. And that is part of the writing process too. You have to sit and think about it. You can't it's not going to come to you immediately. You need to think about it. I think the lesson that is learned is that I think the lesson learned is people in power will fight to keep that power. Because Harrison wanted to become emperor to overthrow the handicapper general, and the handicapper general is the one that shoots him dead. She is fighting to keep her power. So look, I have come up with a theme. People in power will fight to keep that power. That is my theme. So I can write about that. And so in his short story, Harrison Bergeron, Kurt Vonnegut, the author, develops the theme. And so you're going to insert the theme you identified. You can use the same stem for your thematic analysis on Phoenix, Arizona as well. Develops the theme that people in power will fight to keep that power by, and so now I need to explain my text evidence. How does he develop that theme? He develops that theme by, well, we see that by showing, let's say by showing what happens when the power is threatened. That's how I'm going to word that. Harrison threatens the handicapper general's power, and so what happens to him? He dies. In his short story, Harrison Bergeron, Kurt Vonnegut develops the theme that people in power will fight to keep that power by showing what happens when the power is threatened. Boom. That's my thesis. I've already written like 1/3 of this essay. How easy was that? I have a thesis statement. I have explained my evidence. So next, what your next step would be, is to explain that. So you now need to illustrate it. So I would say Harrison takes off his handicaps and let's say he convinces a ballerina to do the same as well. They show what can be done without their handicaps, awing the audience. Because the audience is amazed. Harrison flies. Like, without his handicaps, he can fly. That is how advanced he is as a person. but the handicapper general kills Harrison before he can make any changes. She also erases the memories of every witness to the scene. So look, this is my text evidence. I am explaining what happens in the story that proves this theme. That is probably the most important part I encourage you to work on in your thematic analysis, is to elaborate, to tell me explicitly what the characters do that develops the theme. So Harrison dies without making any grand changes, and the handicapper general remains in power. That's my body paragraph. And so now I need to get into my conclusion. Remember, we want to wrap it up. Don't just end it there. That's leaving your reader on red, basically. Don't leave them on red. We need to tie it up. And you can, in conclusion, that is a transition statement that works. So in conclusion, Vonnegut, and the author is not your friend. They're not your buddy. They're not your pal. Unless you can show me, a text message or a letter or something that shows, hey, you know the author personally. You refer to them by their last name. You can use the first name. You can use first name if it's in conjunction with last name, so like Kurt Vonnegut, but you can't just call him Kurt. So in conclusion, Vonnegut shows how power. No, I don't like that. I don't like that. And I want you guys to notice how I am revising too. Whoops, sorry. Like, I have to revise my papers too. I'm never happy with the first thing I write down. Revising is part of the process. I am revising right now. So, I'm going to say in conclusion, power is toxic, and I'm going to say power is toxic and addictive. I like that word addictive. Addictive kind of goes with what I said earlier, with what we determined up here. We said the lesson was people in power will fight to keep that power. So that kind of matches, that word addictive. So in conclusion, power is toxic and addictive. Vonnegut illustrates the dangers. No, not the dangers, the links. Let's say the links. The links people will go to keep power when they have it. And look at that. I have written a 3-paragraph thematic analysis. My timer right now on this video is 23 minutes. And it's only that long because we kind of had to go through and review the story a bit. So this assignment won't take you long at all. And actually, so the next thing we need to do, that I would encourage you to do, is let's make sure that we proofread it. I'm just going to copy it. There's this app I like to use. It's called the Hemingway app. It's linked in the OLS as well. Our Hemingway app is what is the URL. It's called the Hemingway Editor. It is free to use. You just copy paste your text into it. And look, it'll give you some advice on your writing. So look, so readability. So readability, as long as you're in between that 7th to 10th grade range, you are good. So the readability of mine is good. It'll give you some advice. So here it says, highlighted in green, 2 uses of passive voice. So, I'm looking at it real quick. Let's see if I can change the passive voice. So, I don't think I can really change it for this first one, but reviewing it, I can change it on this one. They show what can be done without their handicaps. So I'm going to change what can be done, let's say, to what is possible. Yeah, what is possible is a better word. Look at that, I'm revising. Harrison dies without making any grand changes, and the handicapper general remains in power. This marks it as, kind of hard to read. I wonder, what if I make that, instead of a compound sentence, what if I make it 2 simple sentences? Look, and the handicapper general remains in power. So, okay, so that works. So this is revising. And so it's talking about my thesis. Maybe I can rewrite my thesis some. It says my thesis is very hard to read, so let me look at that. In his short story, Harrison Bergeron develops the theme that people in power. Instead of develops the theme, what if I say illustrates? Because that kind of just is, has the same meaning. So okay, so it didn't like that much. What if I do the same thing that I did here? What if I kind of cut the sentence up a bit? Look at that. And so it's okay. I mean, having some hard to read sentences is fine because again, we are high schoolers, so we should have some of that higher level reading. So I'm going to say Vonnegut illustrates what happens when the power is threatened. And look at that. That is a submission I am happy with. So I would submit this now. And so that's what you can do. So revise your submission. Make sure you are proofreading for spelling and grammar. Use this Hemingway Editor app. It'll kind of it'll highlight certain sentences that it wants you to look at. But that is a thematic analysis. So that is what y'all will be working on with Phoenix, Arizona by Sherman Alexie. So follow those steps. Rewatch, use these guiding questions. Use this sentence stem I provided, and it's also provided on the assignment link. But if you can do that, you will write a rock star thematic analysis. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, if you have any questions, please reach out to your content teacher. You all have a great rest of your day, and I know your teacher can't wait to read the essay that you write.